Hello, everybody. Welcome to Soulpepper's training room. My name is Akosia Amo Adem, and I will be helping to facilitate our conversation today. I am in my home in Toronto, Tikaranto, which is also where Soulpepper Theatre stands. This is the land of the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and most recently, the Mississauga of the Credit. It is land with which Indigenous people have long, ongoing, deep relationships. I want to acknowledge that they are the original storytellers of this land and to reaffirm Soulpepper's commitment to celebrating Indigenous artists and Indigenous stories. Now, a little background of what we are doing today for those of you who are new to this. In the fall of 2019, Soulpepper started the training room to provide access to artist training regardless of professional experience. A series of workshops, classes, and conversations, a place to come and learn, practice, meet people, build relationships, and create community. A place to train and ask questions, to keep working and keep thinking. We had our first online session about a month ago. Thank you, COVID-19. And we want to say a big thank you to those who joined us then. We are glad to be back with a new series of conversations around artistic practice, activism, inspiration, and a look ahead with some great leaders in the theater community. So welcome to everyone who could join us today. Yay, we're gonna snap it out. Snap it out. Some of you submitted questions when you registered, and we appreciate that because we will be using them over the course of our conversation. If you're watching this and you have a question or you'd like to ask our artist to speak further about something, you can either email them to questions@soulpepper.ca or on Twitter using the hashtag #SPTrainingRoom. You may notice that we have a chat space below the video. You can use that to chat and share your thoughts with fellow viewers. And of course, you can reach out and ask a question that way as well. Our team is watching the comments and will moderate as needed. So we ask that you be respectful of your fellow viewers and everyone involved. And now, I have the great privilege of introducing our very own 4'11" Filipino cowboy, Nina Lee Aquino. Nina is a director, dramaturge, theater administrator with a string of firsts in Asian Canadian theater. Nina was the founding artistic director of Fuji-an Asian Canadian Theater Company. She organized the first Asian Canadian Theater Conference, edited the first 2 volumes of Asian Canadian play anthology, and co-edited the first award-winning book on Asian Canadian theater. She has been the artistic director of Cahoots Theater, is currently the artistic director of Factory Theater, and is now the youngest president of the Professional Association of Canadian Theaters, also known as PACT. In short, she's a boss. She has directed world premieres and revivals at theaters across the country and has gained great recognition for them. Her list of acknowledgements include the Ken McDougall Award, the John Hirsch Prize, 3 Dora Awards for Outstanding Direction, and the Filipino of Distinction Award in Theatrical Arts and Entertainment. Her leadership has extended into mentoring emerging artists, which has led her to be involved with Paprika Festival, right from the hip with Nightwood Theater and the Amy Project, to name a few. Nina has lectured, taught, and directed innovative projects at educational institutions across the country and has recently been appointed adjunct professor at York University's Department of Theater. But most importantly, she is my friend. Yes. All this greatness packed into the beautiful, fierce, high-waisted pants, crop top wearing 4'11" Filipino cowboy with a brooch that is Nina Lee Aquino. Welcome to the training room. Hi. Hello, my friend. How are you?
I am fine, even during this pandemic.
Yes.
We're rainy day, but
Yes.
I'm doing okay. I'm here with you.
Yes. I know. Look at your face. You're wearing a brooch. Yes. I was not
I
lying.
always, always. That's part of the armor. So
Yes.
yeah,
You wear a brooch, I wear big earrings. It's what we do.
yes, exactly,
It's what we do.
exactly.
Thank you so much for being here today and being my first interviewee. This is my first time doing this with the training room, and I'm really, really excited. And I was so happy when you said yes to doing it and being my first one. I was like, okay, Nina's in here. I can do this. I got this. I got this.
I just didn't want to imagine what it would be like if I said no to you, Akos. So let's just like yeah. So let's just say yes.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Thank you. Yes. I mean, I don't like, we're just going to jump right into our conversation. You
Mhm.
are a force to be reckoned with. I listed off all of these things that you have done and accomplished over your career. And, and I called you a Filipino cowboy. And before people start putting things in the chat about, oh my God, why would you call her that? That is how Nina identifies herself. She identifies herself as a Filipino cowboy, and I think it's amazing. And I'm curious as to why and how you came to start.
Ah, well, I mean, I have evidence. So whoever's been like, oh my God, why'd you call me that? I do have evidence. And, so if we can bring up that, I'm thinking this should actually be my new headshot right
Yes,
there, right
yes,
there, right? I just get that, done.
amazing.
If you like it, of course, then I will seriously consider it.
Listen,
But yes,
I think it's cute. You got the hat going, you got the plaid
yeah.
shirt, your name is on that mailbox, like it's done.
Yeah, and I am that picture is, in Houston, Texas, where I was not born but pretty much raised in my very most formative years. So
Hmm.
ages like, 0 to 7.
Hmm.
I was a daughter of a diplomat, an ambassador who was assigned to Houston, Texas as soon as I was born. My mom being also a badass, I suppose. Was kind of like as soon as she was born, a couple of days later, she got the assignment. Instead of turning it down or asking for a mat leave, she's like, "Yep, I'm packing my entire family." And so she brought us there, and that picture really, like, I really do love this picture. It really sums up. I realize, like, every time I look back to this picture, it really does sum up everything that I was and still am. I love the name Aquino on the mailbox is really significant to me,
Yeah.
because of the implications of my family name and that lineage
Mm.
that I have. I love that it's there in what I remember to be a predominantly white neighborhood, I
Mm.
suppose. And then me, it's Houston Day, and so in Houston Day you do have to wear the Western garb. Everybody has to. So even when you walk into a grocery store, all the cash people, the bag people, like, they're all wearing, the traditional cowboy outfits. And so that picture was taken on Houston Day, and then and yeah, that's pretty much, being a brown body in that kind of space,
Mm.
right? And wearing that and still doing that pose that I feel like it's quintessentially me. I'm like, that's me, even right now. So yeah, that's why it means a lot. It sums up who I am. So
It's
yeah.
awesome. It's awesome. When you sent it to me, I was like, I sent it to the marketing guys. I was like, we have to use this photo. It's so good. I mean, I met you, I'm officially like worked with you last year when we did Schoolgirls together, but your name has been everywhere for so long because you are a boss, but I want to know, I'm curious as to like, how did your journey begin? Like, who were you before you became, artistic director of factory theater? Like,
Mhm.
what was
Yeah.
the thing that drew you to theater, to art, to becoming, to taking this path in life?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting one,
Mm.
and one that really, when you and I had this preliminary chat, and some people might already know this because I'm not really shy to let people know. But a lot of my story really is based on, a series of heartbreaks, a
Mhm.
series of rejections, and then just finally having the courage to strike it out on my own,
Mhm.
and a lot of hard work. So, I was born and bred into musical theater at a very young age, professionally.
Mhm.
I got lucky. I was singing in some, school musical thing, like not even a musical thing, just on stage. And then a casting director of a touring Broadway show just happened to see me. And then that was that. That was the beginning of that. And I did not stop my professional career as a musical actor till I came here to Canada at 17 years old.
Mhm.
Right. So even when I did go back to the Philippines, because we did go back after 7 years, I was in and out of that country, just doing gigs. So musical theater was really, I had trained in both in dance and voice in particular, especially for,
Wow.
since I was six to since I stopped here in Canada at 17.
Mhm.
And so when I came here to Canada and decided I don't want to train anymore. I don't want to. And really, I was a teenager, for crying out loud. But also knowing that in throughout my career, I had really, if I had a bucket list of roles, so if anybody's asking like what my favorite, like I was able to do it, like my own personal bucket list of roles that I had dreamt of playing
Mhm.
when I was younger. I had done it, and so I had always wondered what was next for me already at a young age, like that feeling of contentment for myself was
Mhm.
pretty much that satiated at a very young age. So coming here to Canada and not wanting to train anymore and keep up with taking care of my voice and all of that stuff, like I really started to question that, but I just didn't know.
Mm.
So I focused on acting, or I had focused on wanting to be an actor.
Mm.
So, I took 2 more years of high school and then did the big auditions to the different theater programs of different universities. I went to York University, your alma mater,
Yes.
first year,
Yes.
right? And then of course the really what I describe as a torturous process of being streamed, right, to go into second year. And really I would say that's like my the first pivotal moment
Mm.
of my life was not seeing my name on that list. Like I
Mm.
really wanted to be in a part of the acting stream, the magic 16, as
Wow.
some people had called it back then, that list. And not seeing my name on that list pretty much destroyed me. Like,
Wow.
and because I was so young, right? Like you go through your first year trying everything, still trying to make friends, still trying to figure out who the fuck you are. And so for me not having a support system and then going through such a big rejection,
Mm.
really dictated a lot of my other choices then.
Mm.
So that heartbreak, so I'm like, okay, well, if I'm not an actor, then I'm not. If York says I'm not an actor, then I'm not an actor. And I left, instead of kind of trying to find other avenues. If somebody had said, why don't you try directing? Why don't you, like, I nobody was there really to tell me otherwise. So I'm not an actor, not. So I left.
Mhm.
I did go to the University of Guelph with the intention really of, well, it didn't require auditions
Mhm.
back then. And I was closer to my boyfriend at that time,
Okay.
who was the University of Waterloo. So you can see kind of my mental state, right? Of like where my artistry was. I'm like, fuck it, screw it. I'm not an actor. So I kind of carried that heartbreak in my second year at Guelph, like really not knowing what to do with myself.
Mm.
I knew that I still wanted to be in theater, but was pretty lost. And so I took this course out of no choice because again I registered late, and this was one of the few courses left, Fundamentals of Directing, which was taught by Rick Knowles. And
Mm.
I'm like, fine, I'll do it. It's just a half, I think it was half or full. So, anyways, I took it, and throughout the entire time of that class, like, yeah, I listened, to Rick, he would say that I just kind of pouted throughout the whole time. But I listened. I did not participate. I was I was being stupid. And but I did listen. That I knew there was something about the material that piqued my interest enough to kind of to listen
Mm,
until the final project came, where all of us by no choice had to present a scene. So rehearsing with actors and then presenting it to the scene, and you get your big grade.
mm,
So I did that, not knowing or maybe taking for granted that my first real rehearsal with the actors of my selected scene went really well, went
mm,
quite beautifully. And there was an ease about it. Like I wasn't interested in directing. I did not see myself as a director at that time. But when I did do it, it was great. Like I wasn't even anxious about it. And maybe because at that time nothing was at stake.
mhm.
But I just remember presenting it at class, and it went really well, and everybody was kind of like quiet and gobsmacked or whatever, because again, I'm like the 4'11" that never talked, that never volunteered for anything. And then I just remember after class, Rick calls me into his office and says, Nina, you tell beautiful stories.
Mm,
And I think that's the second pivotal moment, I think, like, and that's why I remember it so clearly, that it was just that. And then he goes, okay, you may leave. Like he just left me with that little mic drop moment. And it, something clicked. Don't know what yet. That was to come for the following year, when I'm like, okay, maybe I'll try this directing bit, because
mhm,
somebody said I told beautiful stories. And so this is where like enter Judith Thompson, who, I did not really have a class with,
mhm.
but called me anyways. And then into her office, opened her drawer and gave me the play Mother Tongue, by Betty Kwan. And then said, I want you to direct this. And I'm like, Judith, I'm like the one of two Asians in the department. How am I going to pull this off? Because it needed three Asian actors and all of that stuff. And she goes, you'll find a way. But let me just tell you something. And then she goes on to say, if you want to still become an actor, which I know that maybe in your heart you still do, you will be one of thousands of people trying to break down that wall.
Mm.
And this is without context, just one of thousands breakdown. But if you decide to become a director and train hard and work hard and become a director and become, in a position of power, then you can be that door to that wall.
Wow.
That's the third. That
Wow.
really was like that,
Yeah,
the puzzle pieces of my life coming together.
yeah.
So that door to that wall. And
Oh,
that's it, like it's one thing to direct, but to direct with real meaningful purpose, that's the one that I'm like, I can do that. I
ama
will do that. And
that's
I
a
think from that really point on, but I will say that the stupid thing, well, not stupid, but I just never learned. So I focused my all my efforts into directing. Mother Tongue was the first non-white play ever to be produced at the University of Guelph, which opened the doors to other brown productions since
wow.
I've left. So I'm super grateful for that. And again, I didn't even know that until I left. Kind of the legacy. So talk about door opening. But
Yeah.
I said, okay, I'm going to focus on. So I went back to York
Oh, no.
and applied for their MFA in directing.
Uh-huh.
And once again, did not get in.
Oh my god.
Uh,
You're gonna
once again, I know, once again was told I was not a director.
Oh,
But it was different this time. Like that rejection versus the acting one.
mm,
Like the difference for me is that I had people who had my back. Like, do you mean I had a support system in place?
yeah,
I had enough, being older, wiser, but again, mentors to tell me otherwise, to
yeah.
tell me there is another way. That this is not, so that I think made all the difference. And so when that MFA didn't happen, instead of like, oh my God, they're right, it was screw you, I'm doing this, nothing's stopping me. And
Amazing.
so I here we are,
And
right?
here we are.
So yeah.
That's incredible. I think that's such a big lesson for an artist coming up in like whatever you choose to do, that rejection can sometimes be so debilitating. And yes, I mean, like at first you're like, you feel all the feelings that you feel, but like if you did not get rejected from York, you would not have gone to Guelph to do that directing program and met the instructor who told you who you do beautiful stories. Judith Thompson wouldn't have found you and asked
Yeah.
you, like all these things led to you being somebody who can be a door to the
Well,
world.
all these things led to me being an adjunct professor at York University, right? Like,
Yes.
and so it's just, I realize now, again, in my wisdom and all the string of heartbreaks and rejection and the fantasies of revenge that and I said this in a convocation, like a couple of months ago at York, saying that I was meant to come to York as a student in a different capacity,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
That my time at York was not going to be a student, but a student in a different way.
Yeah.
So, because I consider York to be a touchstone, one of those places that is actually near and dear to me. That's why I'm affiliated with them. I direct, like I teach there. Like, so
Mhm.
I don't mind. I mean,
Mhm.
now it's okay. But it is funny to think about, like twice rejected and now I'm there. So
And the fact that now they came to you, right? Like you
yeah, yeah,
left and you built yourself up, and now you know they they were the ones who were like, hey, they're knocking on the doors that you're creating.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
think
And
it's
that, the learning doesn't stop. But again, I realize I'm there. I'm there to learn in a different way
yeah,
and to give myself in a different way.
yeah.
Right. So
I mean,
I'll take it.
take it, yes. um when I hear the story of you, being having your play that you did with Judith, the one that Judith Thompson asked you to do, being the first Asian play being produced in that school, like it sounds like the beginning, like from the beginning, you have been shattering stereotypes, you have been shattering, preconceived notions of what theater is, and I feel like that's such a that I mean, people are coming to it now, but you have been like you've
It's
been doing it.
yeah, it's been a long, long road, of course. Like, I mean, with mother tongue being kind of the first, not only Asian Canadian, but just the first brown play, like non-white play ever in the history of that university. Like it's yeah, about time, but like also it was groundbreaking and I wish that it wasn't. I really do, and a
Mhm.
lot of the things that I have done, that seems so normal to me have been labeled that. And I tend to shy away from those things like pioneers and trailblazers, because I don't know. Sometimes, the opposite of that is, as again, my dear mentor Rick has told me once, usually the first ones out the gate are the first ones to get their teeth bashed in,
Mm,
right? So
yeah,
along with that fight, along with shattering those things, like come wounds,
mhm,
and trauma
yeah,
and and heartaches and rejection, right? So
yeah,
again, 4'11" Filipino cowboy, applying to be a director and MF. That was probably like, I would even challenge if that was ever, you know
mhm,
if that kind of body ever even applied, you
yeah.
know but I'm glad that if I was the first, then so be it. As I know, like I'm usually am and I usually am the risk, that it's either you take me or you don't,
Mhm.
right?
You take me, or I'm gonna
That's
create my own, which is what you did. Like, I mean,
exactly.
you
Exactly.
created your own.
Yeah,
right?
and I mean the basis of Fuji-an, right? Which was, back then there had been lots of stops and starts with the Asian Canadian theater movement back then, but Fuji-an was literally born out of, again, invisibility. That
Mhm.
when I started doing my paper on Asian Canadian theater, and typed up, went to the library and typed up Asian Canadian drama, nothing popped out in the catalog,
Mm,
nothing. And so at so I would say that's my fourth kind of pivotal moment, like eureka moment of like, oh my god, if that doesn't exist in the library, then how am I supposed to exist?
mm,
you know so
yeah.
again, that door to that wall, that telling beautiful stories, all were kind of beautifully intersecting in that way. And so I'm like, oh, is this what, like, maybe this is what I'm supposed to be. So I ended up presenting and defending my paper on Asian Canadian theater, and the conclusion of that paper was somebody needs to form a company long enough to be able to create momentum for Asian Canadian artists to create, to put their voices out there, to put their stories out there on a regular basis, and not just, as part, a token part of a mainstream theater company, and then we don't hear from us ever again until another company decides to have, that one slot for the Asian playwright. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I concluded that we needed a force, a galvanizing, like a glue of some sort to kind of keep Asian Canadian artists creating.
Hmm.
And so Fujian at that time, and if you want to call up, picture number one was born out of the
Oh,
need
look at
to.
y'all.
I
Wow.
know, look at that. Out of a need to. That was in 2003 officially,
Uh-huh.
and our first foray. And if you go to picture number two, and you'll see Banana Boys, which I know a lot of people who are familiar with. That was our kind of, that was my directorial debut, and Fujian's launch into the theater community. There's Ince, you'll see Ince there, and Richard. There's still, David Yee, like the beginnings of a lot of our, amazing theater artists practitioners right now, like, came from that. And that's the legacy. I ran that company for 7 years solely to create a place for Asian Canadians, right?
Amazing.
And that's kind of just been the quest since: door, wall, enter.
I built it. Here you go. Someone in the chat, Caroline Faye in the chat says, grateful for Nina to open the public's eyes to Brown on stage. And that's what you've been doing your whole career, is putting brown bodies, putting people of color, putting Asian Canadians on stage, and featuring them in roles and in productions that elevate them, that give them, power and strength and beauty, and you know it's incredible.
Yeah, well, happy to do the work, and happy to keep, like, there were amazing Asian Canadian artists before me, like Jean Yoon and Terry Watara and MJ, and they, blood, sweat, and tears paved the way, and I'm a big believer in paying it forward, and so
Yeah.
this is my job. So I will keep paving the way for the next generation.
Amazing. um would you consider, there's a lot of talk about activism, and especially with what's happening in our climate right now, and the things that have happened as a result of COVID-19 and the social unrest that's happening, and how does, and this moment will be recorded and, you know moved forward by the artists, right? That is
Mhm.
what we do. And I guess my question is, do you think that what you've done in your career from the beginning, I feel like it is, but like, would you also say that it's a work of activism?
I hope so. I
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, of course. At some point for me,
Hmm.
I had to just be an advocate, not only for myself, again, like, because like, looking back to everything that I accomplished for myself as an artist,
Hmm.
I'm done. I'm good. So whenever think about, the beginnings of Fuji-an, to Cahoots to Factory, like all of, I, I I just I'm just not convinced that Canada should have one kind of voice,
Mm,
one kind of story.
yeah.
I really reject that notion. And
Mhm.
so, in everything that from one theater company to another, that was just always at the back of my mind, that it's not a one size fits all, that there are lots of voices that are worthy. Like, we have so much space, why are we only seeing one thing? Like,
Yeah.
it just didn't make sense. And so, even before people, like year 2020, right, is what we're now calling the year of awakening, the year of reckoning.
Mhm.
But for a lot of us, for some of us, it's just a year of catch up for everybody else, right?
Eek.
Because, as you said, we've been doing this
I
for
gotta
a
give
long,
you
long
a
time.
I gotta give you let me pause
And
it.
so for me, I just sit back and I'm kind of going, oh, so now you get it. Like,
I
I
mean,
mean, Filipino
you
will tell you that it's like,
said it's
what?
a year of catch up. You said for some folks, it's a year of catching up. We gotta snap it up.
It's like after 20 years, and I have to say the road, has been lonely at
Mhm.
times, because there were points in my life, in maybe an activist's life, that
Mhm.
you go, maybe it's just me,
Mm.
maybe I'm crazy, maybe, like, this fight for, voices on stage, for different bodies on stage, for people, holding the lens, to interpret the story, that the fight, maybe it's me, maybe I'm just crazy. And so there
Mm.
were, moments of deep doubt, throughout my career. And when you encounter, incidents, not so great, like that, you tell yourself, like, that's it, I'm really like, so it's that. And so this year, if anything, for me, was like, okay, so I wasn't crazy when I yelled at the phone at some really racist white dude who's, so if anything, for me, it's like, okay, good, we're good, onwards.
Yeah.
So,
Validation and some vindication a little bit, you
it's a
know?
lot of work. It's a lot of work. And, and what social media, for example, has done, really has, for a lot of our, emerging artists, especially our young artists of color, is
Mhm.
for them to either read, really beautiful, articulate rhetoric that's out there,
Mhm.
and for us to be able to actually express it through the posts, especially during, the intense moment in the BLM movement,
Yeah.
right? Like, lots of, important integral stories were told and shared and disseminated, whereas back in my day, I didn't have that, and I'm still not used to that. So I still in that case, I'll still get the young ones, and the ones that are really, I don't do the social media thing. I still kind of just try and roll up my sleeves and do it. I'm often behind the scenes. The work that I do is often
Mhm.
not loud. I often say, like, I'm not going to go through the back door, I'm not going to go through the front door,
Yeah.
I'm going to go through the back door. So, but it's still ongoing. It's just, my way has always been, um I just have to do it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to, I just have to do it, and
I feel
that's
like that's the thing about being a woman though. Like, can I say that? Can I say that though? I said it, so I guess I can. Like the fact that like women, we'll just get it done. We will do it. And like what I think is so beautiful about this moment in our city right now is the amount of females in artistic leadership, you know and specifically women of color. And I for me as an actor looking to these institutions that I have worked at all across the city, to have somebody in leadership that actually looks like me, like that is beyond my wildest dream. And so I think like I think it's a very special moment in time in specifically in our city. And I was curious for you, for the longest time, you stood alone. You stood
Yeah,
alone.
and what a freaking, like, come on, Coach. I mean, what, like, It's not like I inherited something easy, right?
Of
Like
course.
how I went to how I got factory was so tumultuous, was
Mhm.
so like controversial,
Yeah.
and there was just no time to celebrate anything. And
Yeah.
yes, at that time, I would say that I was the first, non-white, uh,
Mhm.
brown female artistic director of a venued company in the
Mm.
entire country,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Nobody would even kind of even look at that container. It's just because of the circumstances of where I stepped into the light with factory,
Mhm.
um that was overshadowed more so than what it meant for me to be the AD of it, the sole AD. And
Yeah.
then come that, right? Like, I am proud to say, like, maybe I might be the first AD to have undergone a boycott, near bankruptcy, like all the crises, and now the pandemic. Like, I'm like, wow, I can get through anything. Like after this, if I go
Right?
do you know what I mean? Just add it to the list, you know,
Oh, COVID.
and we good. I think give me, so
Yeah.
yeah, I would say that, again, being the first of stuff is never easy. Yeah, teeth bashed in, so like out the gate first. And some of, the programming, like to be able to own factory, right, and be not afraid of failure,
Mm.
because the pressure, right,
Yeah.
again, of, I think that if I was in a 4'11" Filipino cowboy occupying factory space as a leader, if I was a man, if as a white man, I think the reaction would have been different.
Mhm.
I'm gonna just put it out
Yeah.
there. But
Don't
because
say
it was
it.
me, and there's a lot of, like, again, the preconceived notions of what a leader should look like, of running a venue company. It's
Yeah.
hard, right? And I
Yeah.
kind of broke that mold,
Mhm.
in a very, again, in a very chaotic, very intense period of that history's time.
Mhm.
And then to be able to try and turn it around, right?
Mhm.
And ruffle feathers
Yeah.
and, make choices and fucking stumble and fall flat on your face and pick yourself, like everybody's just watching.
Yeah.
And, but another interesting thing that I kind of held on to going into factory when we were just facing crisis after crisis was somebody had told me a long time ago, if you translate the word crisis in another language, it actually means dangerous opportunity, right? So
Ooh.
that's, I would say, I guess, the fifth pivotal moment. So, again, weaving
Hey,
all
very
the other, like,
good.
light bulb moments in my life,
Mhm.
um, that was the thing that I hung on to when I was running factory,
Mhm.
at its worst, and
Yeah.
that, dangerous opportunity just came back to me, and really, kind of buckling down and kind of go, okay, you know what, I'm going to surrender to
Mhm.
all of this crap, and just, like, I've got nothing left but my integrity
Yeah.
and my authenticity, and I'm just going to really respond and act as genuinely as I can, and be who, like, I cannot be in somebody else's shoes. I don't want to change things to prove a point. I can only kind of just stick through to what I
Mhm.
hold dear, and my values and my belief in Canadian theater and new play development, and again in voices, in diverse voices. And so
Mhm.
yeah, that was kind of where the naked season onwards of
Yeah.
what factory is now was born,
I
right?
was gonna I
That
was
is
gonna ask
pure
you.
100% just me, you
Yeah,
know?
I was gonna say, is that what inspired the idea for the naked season? Just trying to like hold on to who you are and sort of, put that out there first and foremost before
Yeah,
anything else.
I was just like, you know what? I am going to just, I if I have a different set, if I have a different set of definitions of what Canadian is, so be it. Like, I think the first 3 seasons, my first 3 failed seasons at Factory, and I'm so owning that,
Mhm.
and everybody needs that. because
Mhm.
it's healthy,
Yep.
was just me trying to please everybody, my board, my staff, my co-artistic director at that time. Like, and so when I finally when I finally had the clarity of what my role was going to be, but the courage to
Mhm.
be who I am and what I know of myself. Um, yeah, and to kind of go, fuck it, like this is what you think Canadian theater is, this is what I think Canadian theater could be, and
Right.
then offer, right? So all of these are just offerings, different perspectives, different, intersections, collisions, and just kind of just leaning into all of that complicated
Mhm.
stuff. Because again, if you look at that picture of me as a Filipino cowboy, like it's not defined. Like, who am I in that picture?
In that
And
picture.
I'm kind of done defining that. Like,
Yeah.
I am all of that Western, Eastern, Filipino,
Mm.
Texan, all of that messy stuff. And I kind of got tired of trying to neatly compartmentalize or categorize that in who I am as an identity, and in my art and my aesthetic. I'm a musical theater person. Even the way I direct and see things, I realize like, oh yeah, I can take myself out of musical theater, but musical theater cannot be not part of me. So my aesthetic as a director, the influences of musical theater are still there,
Mm.
um and that's that, right? And that's it's a mashup of all of those things, and I'm okay with that.
It's amazing. Nina, I just, you out here talking about dangerous opportunity and thinking that instead of crisis, like it's just it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Um,
That's yeah.
we have a question from somebody who when they registered to be a part of this chat, sent in some questions, and so I'm gonna ask you this because I thought it was an interesting one. I'm gonna butcher the name, so I apologize in advance. Savert Das. I'm so sorry, Boo. I'm so sorry. Wants to know, what have you seen in the theater that gives you hope that the problems we see are fixable?
Yeah, I think first and foremost for me, I don't know if problems are fixable at the moment. But
Okay.
I do think that as a theater artist, can we transform?
Mm,
Can we influence? Can
mhm.
we inspire? Can we enlighten?
Yeah,
Absolutely. That is our job.
yeah.
So there are two shows that I saw pre-COVID that seems like a million gajillion years ago, but they were recent, that really gave me hope about everything. One of which I saw at Paprika Festival, and one I saw at the Fringe Festival. So one
Mhm,
was called A Perfect Ball of Pho by Nam Nguyen,
mhm,
and Fine China by Julie Fan. And both pieces, I remember clearly, like whoever was with me, I came out smiling. And I realized that I was smiling because I'm like, why is my face so tired? 'Cause- and then, whoever was me was like, it's because you're smiling me. And I'm like, oh yeah,
oh,
and just realizing like I haven't felt that joy, watching these two. And I love the fact that these two were young Asian Canadian playwrights, theater creators. And it was the first time in a long time that I said, like, to myself, like, yeah, I think we're going to be okay.
mm,
I think that the world's going to be in good hands, so watching watching their creations unfold, and both were, I say, imperfectly perfect.
mm,
They were flawed. I mean, it's the Fringe and it's Paprika Festival, so did it have the fancy lights? And like, I just did not care. It transcended all of that, and just allowed me to laugh, to cry, and both were political in their own way, and just both had something freaking awesome to say, that was both dark and truthful and also humorous and loving, so I'd say those two works were my
amazing.
favorite.
It's amazing. This generation, they're gonna do it. They're gonna do
Absolutely. Oh
they're
my
gonna
God.
they're just like I feel like, I mean, I'm like just slightly older. Just slightly. But I feel like there's a fearlessness that these young artists have, and a boldness that to claim their space and to not apologize for claiming. They know their right to claim
Yeah.
space,
Yeah.
which is exciting. It's very, very exciting to see.
And it's my job to see them. It's
Yeah.
my job to see that. And, as somebody who's been chasing space her entire life. I say, like, I've always pursued titles to give to myself. York actually was the first to ever give me a title. So it was kind of nice to feel that, like, for the first, I'm like, oh, somebody's giving me it, because all my life I've just kind of been titling myself, or I pursue those titles, being an artistic director, being,
Mm,
having to make my own. So I made a vow after that, like, moment in the library where I did not see any Asian Canadian work. It was just a blinking cursor. I made a vow to myself that I will never ever have somebody else go feel that way as
mm,
I felt that day. So even to this day, whether I was a Cahoots, Fuji-an, or even now at Factory, it's important to me that, emerging artists that have the guts to even email me and
yeah,
invite me to see their show, invite me for coffee, like, I will always ever, like, that's part of my vow, to at least acknowledge that they exist,
yeah.
because I did not have that when I was younger. And again, I just never want anybody else to go through that. So, as much as I can, in my capacity, and even when I'm training and
Mhm,
mentoring other artists under me, that's something that, I it's a priority for me, for them to impart to them, how the impact of just acknowledging one's existence. You may not like it,
listen.
right? Like, you may disagree or whatever, but to kind of just go, I see you,
Yeah.
I see your work. That's why I'm here sitting in the dark watching your show, Fringe or something at Soulpepper. It's like,
Yeah.
I see you, I may not like it. I may hate it at the, at the end of the night, but I saw you.
Yeah.
And that's what matters to me,
And that's
So,
like that's the first step, right? Is to be seen, right? Whether it's
mhm,
good or bad is irrelevant. The fact that there's actual bodies there that are being seen is the step, is the thing that is going to build the tools and the skills that then will make them better than they are. There is a Nathan Carroll in the chat, has a question. And the question is, was it ever a challenging decision to focus on AD, to focus on an AD position as opposed to freelancing? And if so, what was that decision like, and when did you make it?
they happen simultaneous. And and to be, I mean, because I was the AD at Fujian, and the only way that I could get paid is to run the company, was to direct the shows that we produce. So at the same time that I was growing as an artistic director, growing a company, I also just had a chance to grow as a director.
Mm,
Which a lot of emerging artists start out that way anyways, right? You run your company, or you put together, a show. um it's the realization that I can keep doing this, and kind of separately, was really when I decided that it was time for me to let go of Fujian. When I felt like, okay, I've been at this company for 7 years, and I've taken it to a level. It's now, for me, I know it's time to leave a company when the company is at its peak. I
mm,
kind of, so because that's a great way to hand it off to
yeah.
the next person, right?
Not the way that you
So,
received it, but in a better condition.
oh
Fantastic.
yeah, babysitters club mentality. Like, leave it, like, leave it to somebody in much better condition. So when I felt like it was time to leave Fujian, the idea of being an AD for another theater company, for me to be able to expand my reach,
Mm,
was, and to keep being a door to another, maybe part of the wall,
yeah.
right, was necessary. but directing, freelance directing, like I don't, they're separate, but they're also interconnected, because being an AD to me, um, it's kind of like directing a mega big production with your communities as your cast and your designers and whatnot, right? Working towards, perpetually towards an opening night that will never get there. So it's
Mhm.
always, you're always constantly rehearsing, trying things out, exploring things, and which is always the best part of any process anyways.
Yeah.
So just understanding that, again, what Judith had said, if I put myself in a position of power, I can be that door to that wall.
Mhm.
So freelance directing was fine and all, but I wasn't content to just bring whoever my choices were in a production if I know that I am capable of bringing more people in.
Mm.
Being an AD just allowed me broader shoulders to, like, do you know what I mean, to carry
Yeah.
people that I needed to carry through that door.
Yeah.
So I love both,
Mhm.
and um, but if I want to always be where I'm most useful, right?
Right.
Like that's always kind of my, so if giving up directing for a little bit to be an AD, to focus on being an AD of a company, is what it takes right now, right at this moment, to
Mhm.
ensure that our theater community at large is going to go in a good direction, then so be it.
Amazing. Um, there's another question from one of the emails that came through. I'm gonna mess up this name once again. Sanskrit Marath. I'm so sorry. Um, asks, how do you merge your Eurocentric training with cultural wisdom to make relevant art?
Um, how do I merge it? I just do. I think, again, I think I just lean
Same.
into, I can only be who I am,
Yeah.
right? And who I am also shifts, by education, training, knowledge, by, like, do you know what I mean, meeting amazing people
Yeah.
along the way. Again, like the genuine thirst for learning, I
Mhm.
think just allows me to keep shifting who I am in my experiences.
Yeah.
So, I was a very different director when I directed, a David Yee play or Banana Boys back then, to when you met me, of course, in the room of schoolgirls,
Yeah.
right? And it is through the chats, it's through talking with whoever is engaging with me as a director, with my actors, with my designers, and, like, really, like, deep listening, that I'm like, oh, okay, so a molecule, right, in my body has shifted,
Yeah.
and leaning into that, I never want to stop discovering and learning about that. And so, because actually it enables me to be the most flexible, like,
Amazing.
do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so with my like the Western sensibilities, like, and my Filipinaness, like, those things I'll never change. And I just need to trust that they're always going to be there, and they're going to kick in when it needs to. But what's always exciting to me is,
Mhm.
layers,
Yeah.
right? Like, my Filipino-ness is not going to diminish by doing, a play that's not Filipino,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That is, I bring that with me. My
Yeah.
musical theater training is always going to influence the way I see, a straight play.
Yeah.
Like, like,
Yeah.
and again, whoever hires me, if they know what they're getting into, that is what they're going to get when they hire me. And that is what I demand,
Yeah.
and so how I see things, from casting to casting my creative team, from envisioning what a production could be, is all of that
Mm.
and mashed up together. And I've decided a long time ago to stop labeling what that is,
Mm.
and just go, oh, it's Nina. 4'11" Filipino cowboy,
Yeah.
right? Like, that's just what you're gonna get. And so, and my productions are really, like, the clearest gateway of what I think about, how I think about things, what I'm going through. My stance on schoolgirls, for example, is very clear to
Mm,
me. Like, even though it was a specific story, I did not think that my Filipino-ness and my being a woman and my
mhm.
growing up in a colonized, and my thoughts on shadism, like I put that all in there in that production too. Again, because there's so much space.
Yep. Yep.
Like, do you know what I mean? And the fun part is how to share it meaningfully
Yeah.
without diminishing anybody's light. And I think that's the problem here is like, when we want, like, there's so many different ways of center is fluid.
Mm.
Um and sometimes also you don't need to be the freaking center. I like being able to be on the periphery, and I'm sometimes the one lone audience member that will like look at that one detail or all the action. So I always think about that too when I'm directing, is that there's always stuff in the periphery, and somebody, a pair of eyes will be on that too, and that means something. So everything you do as a director is deliberate, right?
Everything you do as a director is deliberate. Nina, I think that's a beautiful place to end, to wrap up this conversation. If you if you take anything away from this, I think it's how deliberate you are in being unapologetically you. And I am so, so thankful and grateful to have had the opportunity to meet you and work with you and develop a relationship with you and be friends. Thank you so, so much
Thank
for taking
you.
time out of your very busy day. Because, like I said before, she is a boss. Is out
This is a
here
good
doing.
distraction.
She's a boss. And if we can steal her away for an hour to just pick her brain about life and art, we are very, very blessed to be able to do it. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Akos, and thank you so much for the lovely words. I mean, I hope I made sense.
You
I think so.
people are
I
eating
never
it.
know these things.
People are eating it up. They gonna eat it up. They'll be like, okay, dangerous opportunity.
Uh,
Mm.
this was
Thank
fun,
you.
Akos. Let's do this again. And happy to be your first. So
Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to thank everybody who joined us on this chat. Thank you so much for taking your time out of your day to be with us. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you for your questions and your thoughts and comments. They really helped infuse the conversations. We thank you. I want to thank my whole team for putting this together. Tanya, our producer, Brad and Michael in marketing, the tech support from Corey, Danielle, Marisha, and Mimi. You guys, I'm gonna say we had the smoothest run. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that because I feel like we did. Um, I hope you all have a great, great day. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Wear your masks if you're gonna go outside because we are in the middle of a pandemic. And we will see you very soon. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.